You stroll in 10 minutes past call time and think that's acceptable? This is not a campus job. This is a Fortune 500 company.
I hear you, sir. It's just train shut down 2 stops back. I ran the rest of the way. That's why I'm a little out of breath.
Everyone has excuses.
Not looking for a pass, just letting you know I wasn't grabbing coffee. I'm here, ready to work.
Yes, sir.
I told you twice already. This isn't how we do things here. You don't just walk in and expect someone to drop everything. You hear me? We have protocols for a reason. Stand there all you want, but you're not going to get what you came for by ignoring them.
I'm not ignoring anything. I'm just waiting. Like you asked me to the first time. It means I'm not.
What happens when a man in a $3,000 suit looks at you and decides, without a single word exchanged, that you don't belong? Marcus Thompson learned the answer to that question in the lobby of his own father's company. Surrounded by onlookers with their phones raised, recording every humiliating second, he stood there, restrained, accused, and treated like a criminal, while the very man responsible for his suffering had no idea who he was really dealing with. This is a story about invisible privilege, unchecked authority, and the split-second judgments that can destroy a person's dignity. What you're about to hear will make you question everything you think you know about respect, power, and justice in the workplace.
Marcus Thompson had always been taught that respect was earned, not given. At 26 years old, he carried himself with quiet confidence, the kind that came from knowing your worth without needing to announce it. He'd graduated summa cum laude from Stanford with a degree in business analytics, turned down offers from Fortune 500 companies, and spent the last 3 years working his way through smaller firms, learning the industry from the ground up. His father, Richard Thompson, was the founder and CEO of Meridian Technologies, a mid-sized tech company that had revolutionized cloud security systems. Richard was a self-made man who'd built his empire from nothing, and he'd raised Marcus with one unshakable principle: privilege without perspective is poison. That's why Marcus never told anyone who his father was. When he applied for an entry-level analyst position at Meridian 6 months ago, he used his mother's maiden name, Marcus Hayes. He wanted to earn his place, prove himself, without the shadow of nepotism following him through the hallways. His father knew. They'd agreed on it together, but no one else did. Marcus blended in seamlessly. He came in early, stayed late, and delivered work that consistently exceeded expectations. His colleagues liked him. His direct supervisor, Janet, often praised his analytical skills in team meetings. He'd made friends in the break room, joined the company softball team, and even started mentoring a younger analyst who reminded him of himself at that age. But there was one person who never warmed to him: Derek Carlson, the regional operations manager. Derek was the kind of man who measured his worth by the size of his office and the sharpness of his suits. He'd been with Meridian for 8 years, working his way up through a combination of competence and ruthless politicking. He had the CEO's ear, or so he thought, and he wielded his authority like a weapon. Derek didn't just manage, he dominated. He was known for his tough love approach, which was really just cruelty disguised as leadership. From Marcus's first week, Derek watched him differently than he watched others. It was subtle at first, a lingering glance when Marcus entered the conference room, a pause before responding to his questions, a slight edge in his tone that wasn't there with other junior analysts. Marcus noticed, but said nothing. He'd experienced this before: the hypervisibility, the unspoken suspicion, the feeling of being sized up before you even opened your mouth. Then came the small comments. "You're surprisingly articulate for someone in your position. I'm impressed you got through Stanford. They must have really wanted to diversify. Make sure you're not just coasting on other factors." Derek always delivered these remarks with a smile, in front of others, so they could be dismissed as jokes if questioned. But Marcus felt the sting every time. Still, he pushed forward. He told himself that his work would speak for itself, that Derek's insecurity wasn't his problem to solve, that eventually merit would win out over prejudice. Then came the day everything changed. It was a Wednesday morning, September 18th, 2024. Marcus had been working late the night before, finalizing a critical security audit report that Janet needed for a board presentation. He'd left the office at 2 a.m., gone home for a few hours of sleep, and returned at 7:30 a.m. with his laptop and his worn backpack and a coffee in hand. He was exhausted, dressed casually in jeans and a hoodie because he planned to work from a quiet corner, not attend meetings. He swiped his access card at the front entrance of Meridian Technologies, same as he did every morning. The glass doors clicked open. He walked through the lobby, a soaring, modern space with marble floors, floor-to-ceiling windows, and the company logo gleaming behind the reception desk. He didn't notice Derek Carlson standing near the security desk, talking to a guard. But Derek noticed him. And in Derek's eyes, Marcus, with his backpack, his hoodie, his dark skin, and his early morning exhaustion, didn't look like an employee. He looked like a threat.
"Excuse me." Marcus heard the voice but assumed it was meant for someone else. He kept walking toward the elevators, mentally running through his to-do list, thinking about the audit report waiting on his desk. "Excuse me. Sir." The word sir was delivered with such sharp emphasis that Marcus stopped and turned. Derek Carlson was striding toward him with a security guard in tow, a heavy-set white man named Phil, who Marcus had seen around but never spoken to. "Can I help you?" Marcus asked, his voice calm but confused. Derek's eyes traveled from Marcus's face to his backpack and back again, his expression hardening. "I need to see your employee ID." Marcus blinked. "My what?" "Your employee badge. You just walked in here and I don't recognize you. We've had some security concerns lately and I need to verify that you're authorized to be in this building." The lobby wasn't crowded yet, but a few early arrivals were scattered around, grabbing coffee from the cafe counter, checking their phones near the seating area. Marcus felt their attention shifting toward the confrontation. "I work here," Marcus said, keeping his tone even. "I'm in analytics. I've been here for 6 months. Derek crossed his arms. "Then showing me your badge shouldn't be a problem." Marcus reached into his pocket, then froze. His badge wasn't there. He'd been so exhausted when he left at 2 a.m. that he must have left it on his desk. He'd used his access card to get in the front door. That should have been enough. That was enough every other day. "I don't have it on me right now," Marcus admitted, "but I used my access card to get in. The system verified my credentials. I can show you." "So you don't have ID," Derek interrupted, his voice rising slightly. "You're walking around a private technology company with a backpack, no identification, and you're telling me I should just take your word for it?" "I'm not asking you to take my word for it. I'm telling you I'm an employee. You can call Janet in analytics. She's my supervisor. Or check the access logs from the front door." "Phil," Derek said, turning to the security guard and ignoring Marcus entirely, "we need to detain this individual until we can verify his story. Company policy, we can't have unauthorized people wandering around." Marcus's stomach dropped. "Detain? Are you serious right now?" More people were noticing now. A woman from HR paused mid-stride, her coffee cup hovering near her lips. 2 engineers Marcus recognized from the 3rd floor stopped near the elevator bank, watching. Someone pulled out their phone. "I'm completely serious," Derek said, his voice dripping with false professionalism. "This is a secure facility. We have proprietary technology, sensitive data. I'm not going to apologize for taking security seriously, especially when someone who claims to work here can't even produce a simple ID badge." Marcus felt the heat rising in his chest, not anger yet, but something close. The humiliation of being treated like a suspect, the awareness of eyes on him, the casual certainty in Derek's voice, as if Marcus's humanity was something that needed to be proven rather than assumed. "Derek," Marcus said, using his name deliberately, "I've seen you around. We've been in the same building for months. I sit on the 4th floor. I eat lunch in the same cafeteria as you. You're telling me you don't recognize me at all?" Derek's jaw tightened. For a split second, something flickered in his expression, recognition maybe, or discomfort at being called out, but he didn't back down. I interact with dozens of employees every day. I can't be expected to recognize everyone, especially not junior-level staff who apparently can't follow basic security protocols. Now, you can either cooperate voluntarily, or we can make this more difficult than it needs to be." Phil, the security guard, stepped forward. He looked uncomfortable, his hand moving toward Marcus's arm. "Don't touch me," Marcus said, his voice low and firm. "I'm telling you, I work here. My name is Marcus Hayes. I'm an analyst in the 4th floor analytics department. This is ridiculous." "Then you'll have plenty of time to explain that while we verify your story." Phil escorted him to the security office. "This is racial profiling," Marcus said, his voice rising now, loud enough that everyone in the lobby could hear it. "You're doing this because of how I look. Admit it." The words hung in the air like an accusation, because they were one. Derek's face went red, not with shame, but with indignation. "That is a serious allegation," he said, his voice shaking with manufactured outrage. "I am following company security protocol. The fact that you're trying to make this about race instead of taking responsibility for not having proper identification tells me everything I need to know about your character." Marcus laughed, a bitter, disbelieving sound. "My character? You don't know anything about me. You didn't ask for anyone else's badge this morning. You singled me out the second I walked through that door." "Because you looked suspicious," he shot back. Then realizing how that sounded, he quickly added, "Your behavior looked suspicious. Coming in dressed like that, with a backpack, no visible ID, if you were white, I'd do the exact same thing." "But I'm not white," Marcus said quietly, "and you wouldn't." The lobby had gone almost silent. At least a dozen people were watching now. 3 phones were raised, recording his humiliation. The woman from HR was whispering urgently into her cell phone. I could see the conflict on some faces, people who worked with me, who knew me, but who weren't stepping forward. No one was stepping forward. Phil's hand closed around Marcus's bicep, not violently, but firmly. "Sir, please come with me." "Get your hands off me," Marcus said, trying to pull away. "I haven't done anything wrong." "You're refusing to comply with a security directive," Derek said, his voice triumphant now, as if Marcus's resistance proved his point. "That alone is grounds for removal from the premises. Phil, if he resists, we'll need to call the police." The police. The word hit Marcus like a punch. He thought of all the news stories, all the videos, all the names. He thought of what could happen when police arrived and saw a black man being restrained in a corporate lobby, accused of trespassing. He thought of his father, somewhere in this building, probably in a meeting, having no idea his son was being treated like a criminal 20 floors below. "Fine," Marcus said, his voice hollow. "Fine, I'll go to your security office. But when this is over, when you realize how wrong you are, you need to understand that this doesn't just go away. You humiliated me in front of my coworkers. You treated me like I was less than human because of assumptions you made in 3 seconds. And that's something you're going to have to live with." Derek said nothing. He just nodded to Phil, who began guiding Marcus toward the hallway leading to the security offices. Marcus didn't resist. He walked with his head up, his backpack still on his shoulder, past the faces of people who knew his name but didn't speak it, past the phones recording his humiliation, past the gleaming company logo that his father had designed 15 years ago. Behind him, Derek Carlson stood in the lobby, straightening his tie, convinced he just protected Meridian Technologies from a threat. He had no idea what he had actually done.
The security office was small, windowless, and smelled faintly of stale coffee and industrial cleaning solution. A metal desk, 2 chairs, a computer monitor, and a wall of security camera feeds. Phil gestured for Marcus to sit. He did, dropping his backpack on the floor beside him, his entire body vibrating with a mixture of rage and exhaustion. Phil looked genuinely uncomfortable now. "Look, man, I'm sorry about this. He's a hard-ass sometimes. I'm sure we can get this sorted out quick." "Then sort it out," Marcus said flatly. "Call Janet Morrison and Analytics, extension 4387. She'll verify who I am in 30 seconds.
Phil nodded and picked up the desk phone. He dialed. He waited. He frowned. "No answer," he said. "Must be in a meeting or not at her desk yet." "Then try someone else from my department. Try HR. Check the employee database. Check the access logs from the front door. You'll see my card scan from 7:30 this morning." I will, Phil said, turning to his computer. "Just give me a minute." A minute. Marcus sat there, staring at the wall of security monitors, and watched the lobby on one of the screens. Derek was still there, talking to another manager now, gesturing animatedly, probably explaining how he'd heroically protected the company from a dangerous intruder. On another screen, Marcus could see people clustered in small groups, phones still out, undoubtedly sharing what they'd just witnessed. This was going viral inside the company before it was even resolved. By the time he got back to his desk, if he got back to his desk, everyone would know. Everyone would have seen him being marched away like a criminal. Phil was clicking through screens, muttering to himself. "Okay, so access logs. Here we go. Yeah, I see a card scan at 7:33 a.m. for Marcus Hayes, employee ID 4471, Analytics Department." He looked up, relief washing over his face. "There you are. You're in the system. You're legit." "I know I'm legit," I said, his voice tight. "I've been telling you that for the last 15 minutes. "Right, yeah, Derek said. Derek made an assumption, and instead of asking me a single reasonable question, he decided I was guilty first and gave me a chance to prove my innocence second. Do you understand how that feels?" Phil said nothing. He looked down at his keyboard. Marcus stood. "Am I free to go now?" Yeah, absolutely. I'm really sorry about the confusion." "It wasn't confusion. Confusion is when you mix up someone's name. This was profiling." He grabbed his backpack and walked out of the security office. His hands were shaking. His heart was pounding. He felt hollowed out, like something essential had been scraped away and discarded. He walked back toward the lobby, planning to go straight to the elevator, straight to his desk, to pretend this morning hadn't happened and somehow get through the rest of his day. But as he rounded the corner, he saw Derek still standing there, now talking to Richard Thompson, his father. Marcus froze. Richard was in his early 60s, tall and distinguished, with silver threading through his black hair and the kind of commanding presence that made people instinctively straighten their posture when he entered a room. He wore a dark blue suit, perfectly tailored, and his expression as he listened to Derek was patient but focused. Derek didn't see Marcus yet. He was in full performance mode, his voice carrying across the lobby. "Completely uncooperative, sir. Refused to show ID, became aggressive when questioned, started making unfounded accusations about racial profiling. Frankly, I think we dodged a bullet. If he's willing to act like that over a simple security check, imagine how he'd handle actual workplace conflict. I'd recommend we review his employment status." "You'd recommend what?" The voice came from Marcus. He hadn't meant to speak, but hearing Derek suggest he be fired after everything snapped something inside him. Derek turned, surprised. Richard's eyes shifted to Marcus, and for a fraction of a second, Marcus saw his father's expression change. Not shock, not confusion, rage. Pure, cold, controlled rage. But Derek didn't know. He didn't see it. "This is the individual I was telling you about," Derek said, gesturing dismissively at Marcus. "Security verified he's technically an employee, but his behavior this morning was completely unacceptable. I think we need to seriously consider—" "Derek?" Richard said quietly. "Do you know who this is?" Derek blinked. "I just told you. He's—" "This," Richard said, his voice dropping to something lethal, "is my son." The lobby went silent. Completely, utterly silent. Derek's face drained of color. His mouth opened, then closed. He looked from Richard to Marcus and back again, his brain visibly struggling to recalibrate reality. Your son? Derek whispered. My son, Richard repeated, who has been working here under a different name for 6 months because we both believed he should earn his place on merit, who has consistently delivered exceptional work, who was just humiliated and detained in the lobby of the company I built because you looked at him and decided he was a threat. Derek was shaking now. Sir, I didn't know. I had no idea. That's the problem, Richard said, his voice rising now, echoing through the marble lobby. You didn't know. You didn't ask. You didn't treat him like a human being deserving of basic respect. You saw a young black man and made a decision in 3 seconds that it took you 15 minutes to undo. Marcus stood there, watching his father defend him, and felt something break open inside his chest.
Derek Carlson was fired that afternoon. No negotiation, no severance beyond what was legally required, no letters of recommendation. Richard Thompson called an emergency meeting with HR and legal, reviewed the security footage, and made the decision in less than an hour. Derek's office was cleared by 4 p.m. But that wasn't the end of it. Richard called a company-wide meeting the next morning. Every employee at Meridian Technologies, all 340 of them, gathered in the largest conference space, packed shoulder to shoulder, confused and curious. Marcus stood near the back, still processing everything that had happened. Richard took the stage, and his voice carried the weight of someone who'd spent a lifetime building something meaningful and just watched it crack. Yesterday, he began, something happened in our lobby that I need everyone to hear about. My son, Marcus Thompson, who most of you know as Marcus Hayes, was racially profiled, humiliated, and detained by a member of our management team. Not because he'd done anything wrong, not because he was actually suspicious, but because of assumptions made about who he was based on how he looked. The room was so quiet, you could hear people breathing. I've spent 20 years building this company. I've always believed that Meridian was a place where talent mattered more than background, where respect was the foundation of everything we did. Yesterday, I learned I was wrong. Not about what we should be, but about what we actually are. Because if my own son can be treated like a criminal in the building I built, then we have a deeper problem than one bad manager. He paused, letting the words sink in. Derek Carlson is no longer with this company, but firing him doesn't fix the culture that allowed this to happen. It doesn't erase the fact that other employees stood by and watched without intervening. It doesn't undo the trauma my son experienced. So here's what's going to change. Richard outlined a series of immediate actions. Mandatory anti-bias training for every employee, starting with leadership. The creation of an anonymous reporting system for discrimination. A comprehensive review of security protocols, and the establishment of a diversity and inclusion task force with real authority and budget. But more than that, Richard said, his voice softening, I need every person in this room to understand something. When you see injustice happening in front of you, when you see someone being dehumanized, profiled, or mistreated, your silence is a choice. It's an active choice to let it continue. Some of you knew Marcus. You worked with him. You liked him. And you watched him be humiliated without saying a word. That has to change. Not because I'm demanding it, but because it's the only way we build a place worth working for. He looked directly at Marcus then, and his voice cracked just slightly. I'm proud of my son. Not because of who I am, but because of who he is. He earned his place here. He deserved respect from day one, and the fact that he didn't receive it is on all of us. The meeting ended. People filed out slowly, quietly. A few approached Marcus to apologize, to express their regret at not speaking up. Marcus accepted their words,
but didn't pretend they erased what happened, because they didn't. Janet, his supervisor, found him later that day. She was crying. "I'm so sorry," she said. "I should have been at my desk. I should have answered the phone. I should have—" "It's not your fault," Marcus told her, and he meant it. The fault lay with Derek, yes, but it also lay with a system that taught people to see threats instead of human beings, to value authority over empathy, to protect comfort over justice. Marcus stayed at Meridian Technologies, not because of his father, but because he believed in the possibility of change. The company wasn't perfect, no company is, but they were trying, really trying. The anonymous reporting system caught 3 more instances of discriminatory behavior in the first 2 months. The diversity task force implemented new hiring practices. The culture didn't transform overnight, but it shifted, slowly, painfully, towards something better. Derek Carlson never publicly apologized. He moved to a different city, took a job at a smaller firm, and probably told himself a version of the story where he was the victim. That's how these stories often end, with perpetrators rewriting their own narratives, convinced they were misunderstood rather than wrong. But the people who witnessed what happened to Marcus that day, the ones who stood in the lobby with their phones raised but their mouths closed, they carried it with them. Some of them changed. Some of them found their voices the next time they saw injustice. Some of them didn't. That's the thing about moments like these. They don't just affect the person they happen to, they affect everyone who watches, everyone who chooses to act or chooses to stay silent. Marcus Thompson learned something that day in the lobby of Meridian Technologies. He learned that dignity isn't something you earn through credentials or connections. It's something you're born with, something that should never require proof. He also learned that some people will always demand proof anyway. And that's why stories like this matter. Because until we stop treating certain bodies as suspicious, certain faces as threatening, certain existences as requiring justification, this will keep happening. In lobbies, in stores, in neighborhoods, in every space where power and prejudice intersect.